Go turn on that guy's tape. He's getting separation. He's got separation. Even when he's not getting the ball at times, and hell, when he doesn't have separation, he's still making the catches. It's not going to be hard. For me, it's about getting that ball near that guy and letting him go be George Pickens and go turn on the tape. He's ready to do it.
It's cool to hear Dak Prescott say those words. Separation. I've talked about it ad nauseum. George Pickens is much more than just a deep ball receiver. On today's episode, guys, I spoke with Joe Hoyt, who actually asked that question. Actually, John Machota asked that question, but Joe Hoyt asked a bunch of questions about the chemistry between CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, how he's going to get him involved, and Joe has some really good answers. I hope you guys enjoy this one. Also, a big shout out to Joe, who's just got hired by the Dallas Morning News. That's a huge hiring. Like, that's a big deal for him. So you guys make sure you show him love on Twitter. Make sure you guys follow Joe Hoyt on Twitter. Since he's come on to the Dallas Cowboys scene, he's been amazing. He really has. Thank you guys for growing with me. Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Hoyt of the Dallas Morning News. Dallas Morning News. He's big time now. Joe, how you doing?
I'm good, man. Always a pleasure to talk with you, Foots. A little bit, I feel a little bit bigger, but hey, man, it's you got to stay humble, and I'm stoked to be back where I started my career, and I think that's kind of a good reminder of to stay humble too. So I'm stoked.
Joe, tell us a little bit, we'll get to the task at hand, but just tell us a little bit about your journey, because I'm actually interested and I want the listeners to know, everybody who knows when you come on this channel, I'm going to give you flowers. And since you've been on the scene, Joe, you've added a lot. I'm talking about a lot. You've added a great perspective. You write great articles. You ask some great questions today that we're going to talk about. Just tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, man. Well, first off, thanks, Foots. Always a pleasure to be here and talk with someone else who deserves flowers. But yeah, no, when I graduated college, I interned at the Dallas Morning News, fell in love with the place immediately back in 2016, went to Iowa, went to Portland, then came back to the Dallas Morning News in 2018, was there covering high school sports, college sports, and the Texas Rangers until 2023. And at one point, I went to my bosses and said, hey, my aspiration, my dream is to cover the NFL and to cover the Dallas Cowboys. And I want to see if I can do that here at the Dallas Morning News. And they were pretty honest with me and said, to be honest with you, in order to kind of have that job here, we're going to have to see you cover the NFL. And, so in terms of a straight path up, it wasn't really there. So, I took a chance, went to Lone Star Live for a year. Lone Star Live is now defunct. It has since ceased. And then I went to DLS, which was an amazing opportunity, such a blessing to be able to get that, and work there. And, when the DMN and David Moore retired, threw my hat in the ring and was blessed, man, and so I think it kind of, one thing I'll share, I guess, is don't be afraid to take chances too in your own career and to kind of take the risk. Cause if you have a dream and ambition, it can work out in the end. So I'm blessed. I'm humbled. I'm very excited for this new role.
Joe, you're good at what you do. You're good at what you do. You add a perspective. It's not too much. It's no fluff. And I'll just say this, man, I think the reason why you are where you are, Joe, is because you're very humble. Like when I reached out to you, you didn't send me around the corner. You didn't give me the, I'm bigger than the YouTuber guy talk. And that's real. And I respect that. And I'm thankful for that, man. Joe, you interviewed Dak Prescott today. So where were they? Because I didn't even catch where they were, where Dak was.
So Dak was having his annual kids camp
that's right.
in South Lake, Texas. About 500 kids there. He talked a lot about how, hey, I wish I had this when I was growing up and I want to give back to the community, and how, much he looks forward to every single year to seeing kids. He said he saw a bunch of faces that he's seen many years now that keep coming back. So that was a cool event, but it gave us a chance to also talk a little football with Dak too.
And you guys, you answer some great questions. So here's how I wanted to frame this, Joe. I originally wanted to talk to you about something you had said about Tyler Booker on another show. Actually, you were on with our buddies over at Locked On, and you were talking about you were raving about Tyler Booker. So we'll get to that, and we're not going to be on long. But I wanted to ask you, Joe, you asked Dak Prescott about Pickens. Frame that question and how did he get to pick him talking about Pickens separation? Because that's something that I've seen on film. I think that people haven't went into note about, and you were able to get Dak to talk about that.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to really kind of gain from Dak Prescott, it's funny because we're, a couple weeks from camp, so it's like, what can you really ask Dak about? What's changed since mini camps? And it's, hey, they went on their retreat. And I think one of the biggest storylines through this entire season is how is George Pickens going to handle the ups, the downs, everything in between? And can he be truly the player that, everyone expects him to be, the 1B to CeeDee Lamb's 1A? So I asked him, hey, Dak, you always talk about these retreats and how it's more about getting to know the people, not just throwing and doing all that. Tell me a little bit of what you learned about the person that is George Pickens. And he raved about, hey man, like this is a guy that loved football, and I can tell, he was rattling off memories from my Mississippi State days, and he's like, you got to be a football junkie if you can talk about Mississippi State days and some of the players that I played against. That thing really stood out to him. And then we kind of asked Dak specifically, like, how long is it going to take? John Machota asked this question, who, it was a good one. Like, how long is it going to take so you build chemistry with George Pickens specifically? And he said, hey, it's not going to take long, because guess what? I've seen him get separation. I've seen him not get separation. You know what happens when he doesn't get separation? It's an easy job for me, because I can throw it up to George Pickens and just be the guy that says, hey, George, go make a play and be who you are. So I think that's kind of telling. When you look at George Pickens, and you obviously know this, you watch a lot of film foots, this is a guy that is a contested catch bully, right? We talk a lot about Tedero McMillan and what he can do with 50-50 balls.
Yes.
In terms of the NFL guys available, George Pickens is similar. He's the exact same kind of type of player that the Cowboys wanted in Tedero McMillan. Now they really kind of buy low on a guy that has a lot to prove. And one thing I wrote this week, Foots, and we can talk about it a little bit later, is after this year, where do the Cowboys go? Because either it works out and George Pickens is fantastic and he maybe prices himself out of the Cowboys' range, or it doesn't go well and they're still looking for another wide receiver 2 next year. But my big impression is Dak is thrilled.
Mm-hmm. So that's good stuff right there. One of the things that I want to ask you, right, Joe, people were wondering, okay, how will Dak and George, fit? And the thing is, hearing Dak say that, to me, right? To me, what that lets me know is Dak already has a plan of how to get him the ball, what type of throws make sense for George. And honestly, Joe, I remember talking to you around draft time. This is all I wanted, Joe. Just somebody to take you talked about it too. You were Team Tet, I believe.
Yeah, I thought he would have been an excellent asset for the Cowboys.
Yes, and Carolina swooped in, so it is what it is. Like, that was out of the Cowboys' control. But, like, this may have worked out better because exactly what Dak just said. He's open when he's covered, but he also does get separation, and it's good to hear the quarterback. Reassure us. So now, Joe, I want to ask you, and I want to put Joe on the couch, and I want to ask you what you've seen, Joe, because you're boots on the ground. What you've seen out of Pickens, his demeanor, his vibe, the way he catches the football, the way he runs back to the huddle, the way he bounces around, the way he's taking the coaching. Talk to me, Joe. How does he look out there when you've seen him out there in live work?
It's so fascinating because Dak Prescott talked about this today too, right? Everyone has pre-existing narratives about who they are. And obviously with George Pickens, when you're an NFL player, your narratives will be spoken loudly for you, right? We saw Mike Tomlin say, hey, he's got to grow up and he's got to be a guy that takes the next step. And then usually, aside from Antonio Brown, and that kind of fills it off the end too, when Mike Tomlin says he's done, kind of with some of these guys, usually it doesn't work out the next place much better, right? So I think George Pickens kind of came in with that narrative. And so far, he's done everything to kind of try and dissipate that narrative. He has been the perfect soldier, Foots. He has been, the word I keep using is programmed. It feels like he's been reprogrammed to be very short in media responses, to not give much, just to be very, hey, I'm happy to be here. I want to help this team. Let's play football. And then you talk to people around the Cowboys, and that's what he's been to them too. I think the only personality, not to say he hasn't a personality, with Brian Schottenheimer, where he talks about how much he loves football. But I think the times we see kind of the programming slip a little bit, Foots, is when he's around CeeDee Lamb. And what you've seen so far is kind of just two guys that, Dak said today, they love each other. And you can see those two kind of feed off each other. I think, there was one play where, one thing Brian Schottenheimer kind of instituted during OTAs and minicamp was, hey, run to the end zone when you get the ball, right? It's a very common thing, right? But he also said, hey, if you're a teammate, you run to the end zone too, and we're going to celebrate in the end zone, right? One time CeeDee Lamb had a touchdown, George Pickens ran over there, and we could hear George Pickens cackling as he dapped up CeeDee Lamb, cackling, just like, because CeeDee Lamb had gotten open and it was a great play. And, so the two kind of feel like a little bit two peas in a pod that have, they've had a pre-existing relationship. And I think everything has been kumbaya, everything has been good. But I think one of the narratives of this entire season, Foots, because I think George Pickens at his best can make this the best tandem in the NFL receiving duo. He is that good. But can that grow up stuff happen, right? Can he put away some of the things? Is there a game where CeeDee Lamb gets a ton of targets and he doesn't, and he starts acting out and it causes friction? That's going to be a will he or won't he thing all season. But as of now, without much adversity yet, things have been as good as the Cowboys could have hoped for with George Pickens.
That's what I want to get to, Joe, and I think you answer that, because I mean, to me, we won't know, but I mean, it's just like so far so good, and I don't think this works without a CeeDee Lamb, right? Because I think sometimes, I'll just be honest, Joe, I'm very transparent. You have to have a big bro that you respect, right? Yeah, you respect guys that, vets in the league. It's different when it's CeeDee Lamb. Like, it's different when it's somebody who's had a 1,700-yard season. They know what they're talking about. CeeDee, he's very unselfish. He came out and said there's no 1A, 1B. Like, when you hear that, now it really creates that bond that it's not fake. It's not phony. Joe, was there anything else that you want to add on this Pickens situation before I ask you another question?
Yeah, I think one thing that's going to be fascinating is how they actually utilize both Pickens and Lamb, right? I think, we've kind of talked about it. Like, George Pickens is that guy where, he's got that Anquan and Bolden ability where if he's covered, he's still uncovered because he's that good when the ball's in the air. But I also think one thing that he talked about, and we kind of saw a little bit of this in minicamp, minicamp, as you know, Foots, is very vanilla, right?
Yeah.
But I think we saw kind of a utilization of George Pickens in CeeDee Lamb roles and CeeDee Lamb.
Oh, wow.
I think we saw a little bit of maybe the potential where, these two are going to kind of be running similar stuff. And I think that goes back to the 1A, 1B thing. If they're both kind of running, multiplicity, in the offense and they're doing different stuff, I think that'll be fascinating. But the thing and the last thing I'll harp on with George Pickens, all the talent in the world, CeeDee Lamb has not had a talented player like this next to him his entire career.
Yes.
When you see George Pickens, especially in person, he jumps out, right? But I just think I think that they're in an interesting position because I could see them being in the exact same place they were this past offseason next year, where they're saying, hey, we got to find another running mate for CeeDee Lamb. Like, yeah, George Pickens was great, but now he's signed with the Miami Dolphins on a $100 million deal, $28 million per year, whatever it may be, right? And I could see that possibility lingering. And hey, it's this year. Tomorrow's problems are tomorrow's problems, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's one thing that's also on my mind this year.
In the back of your mind.
Yeah.
Joe, it's crazy because I can hear the excitement in your voice, and I can just tell, like, you are basically telling the fan, the listener, anybody watching this video, like, if a catastrophe happens, it's going to work. And I think that's the level of talent you're talking about with George Pickens. I love Amari Cooper. I think that George Pickens has been held down by bad quarterback play and bad, offensive coordinators and just bad offensive structure and infrastructure. They're like, I don't even think people understand just how good George Pickens is. And it's amazing to hear you say, maybe they are using him in some big slot. Maybe they are using him on some end breaker and moving him as well. Because I think that if you get to that, Joe, now this offense is unlocked. And I'm going to tell you this now. I said with Pickens, these two are going to open up everybody else. They're going to open up your run game. They're going to open up Ferguson. They're, like, expeditiously, like now. You get what I'm saying, Joe? So,
yeah, 100%, dude. I also think, like, Brian Schottenheimer talks a lot about how he wants to run the ball, right? I mean, I think that doesn't mean that it's going to be a run first, pass play, and then do play action only situation. I think we're going to, it's going to be fascinating to see what type of Brian Schottenheimer play caller is. But I wouldn't be surprised if they're kind of airing the ball out and throwing it deep and pushing the ball downfield to try and open up the run game too.
Yeah, I said a lot that this offense, I think, is going to mirror a lot of what Cincinnati does, where it's you have to go in and tell me how you're going to stop those two receivers being Chase and T. Higgins, Chase and T. Higgins, and how you deal with them two, then everything else will fall in place. Joe, I wanted to ask you before we go, and thank you again for doing this. You guys should have got a lot of information. This is a gem right here, especially in the dead period. Joe basically told us how, Ceedee and Pickens are meshing already, and like, so that level of detail, I appreciate that, Joe. I wanted to ask you, you said something on Locked On that really caught my eye, and it was about Tyler Booker, how he carries himself. He looks the part. He's the starter right away. from what you've seen, obviously no pass, Joe. We get it. But what you've seen out of Booker, because I'll tell you this, Joe, I can't remember the time a Cowboys first rounder has been talked about less, whether it's good or bad, than Tyler Booker. Obviously, we got George Pickens, so that's part of the reason. But, like, he's getting dude, the corners, Elam's getting pub. Obviously, Pickens is getting pub. Joe Milton's getting pub, Joe. But tell me about Tyler Booker, bro.
Yeah, and I think, honestly, it's kind of reminiscent of just what a good offensive lineman is, right? Hey, I mean, you don't hear about good offensive linemen during the game, right? Unless they're, doing crazy pancake blocks and stuff like that. But a great offensive lineman isn't heard of because that means they're doing their job well, right? Yeah. And I think that's kind of been the narrative about Tyler Booker. Again, as you pointed out, no pads, right? But this is a guy, and I think this is what I keep coming back to. There is no one, in my opinion, that's going to be more prepared as a rookie to play than Tyler Booker. I would be shocked if there are, for some reason there's a slew of penalties or there's false starts that come up or, he doesn't mesh or he does the wrong assignment, right? That is not going to be Tyler Booker. You hear him talk. I asked him this at minicamp. I was like, Tyler, from talking with coaches, talking with teammates, everyone says you're so prepared. Has there anything that surprised you so far about the NFL level? And he's like, no, because I went to IMG, I went to Alabama, I come from pro-ready stuff. My entire career has been in pursuit of being an NFL offensive lineman. I learned from J.C. Latham. Those two have been working out together again too. They're high school teammates. This is a guy that's so prepared, and I would be shocked if it doesn't work out. I think we go back to draft night, Foots, and I said, hey, this isn't a sexy pick. They're drafting another offensive lineman. But if they got an instant impact starter on the offensive line after Zach Martin has retired, and in this division specifically, ESPN came out today with a defensive line list. 2 of the top 3 defensive tackles among league executives ranked. Number 1 is Dexter Lawrence, and number 3 is Jalen Carter, right?
Yeah.
You need Tyler Booker and Cooper Beebe and Tyler Smith to be – I think you might need it to be the strongest trio, strongest core of this team if you're going to succeed, right? I think obviously the talented receivers, great. Micah Parsons, incredible. Dak Prescott, can he get back to MVP level like he was in 2023? I think that's possible with a good offensive line. But I think those 3 in particular, that is going to be crucial in terms of how much success they can have as a catalyst. I still think Tyler Guyton is the biggest X factor on this team, but I think those 3 in particular, and I think Tyler Booker is something that you don't really question as of right now. I'm very curious to see him in Oxnard.
Yeah, man. I think the thing is like his size, bro. Like, I didn't realize how tall he was. He's not like a refrigerator guard. Like, he looks imposing, and that matters. Like, get off the bus. He's ready to go. You put him, Brevin Spanford, and Pickens, let them walk off the bus first, and we're good to go.
No doubt, man. He everything about him, Foots, seems like he's ready to roll.
Hey, man, this is a really good training camp primer, Joe. Thank you again for your time. I got to tell you, I know people want to watch back and want to listen back because obviously we're recording this. You guys this is a lot of information. I'm telling you, because just knowing now, because I'm going to just go out and say it, barring something catastrophic, no injury, this passing game is going to be back. And now we talked about Booker and we're talking about Pickens, but the two go hand in hand because Booker, especially in pass sets, is going to help Dak out a lot, right? And so these two are now married. And I just think, Joe, the fans getting this information and actually getting it from the man who asked it, I can't thank you enough for coming on this channel, man. Thank you so much.
Of course, but it's always a pleasure, man. Like we've talked about before, man, I think I respect the heck out of your grind, and you're smart as hell, and it's always a pleasure, my guy. So,
hey, let me ask you this, Joe. When you heading out to Oxnard?
I head out the 20th, so I fly in the morning of the 20th. They report later that day. And then I'm there until the 14th. So, I'm stoked. One of the cool things about this new role is I'll be at everything.
Okay.
And I think all the road games, owners meetings, Senior Bowl. So I'll see you at the Senior Bowl.
We gonna hang, Joe.
We're gonna definitely hang. So, but
hey, I got a taco spot. I'm gonna take you to, Joe. We're gonna have a blast.
That sounds like a plan, dude.
All right, man. Much love, guys. Joe Hoyt of the Dallas Morning News. They got a ring to it, Joe. I'm just saying, dog. I'm just saying. Much love to you guys. As always, thank you all for liking, sharing, subscribing. It's your boy, Footsie King. I love you all. Peace.